This show is sponsored by Single Sealed Memorabilia. Find them on Instagram at Singles Sealed Memorabilia and on eBay at Singles and Sealed. Turning their collecting hobby and passion into a shop dream, bringing a variation of wrestling cards to collectors all around the world. They make their own mystery bundles and bring unusual cards to the graded scene. They have 100% positive eBay customer feedback with over 3,000 sales. We do thank Single Sealed Memorabilia for the continued support of the Squared Circle Relics podcast.
And now, presenting from across the pond, it's the Squared Circle Relics podcast.
Hello and welcome to a bonus edition of the Squared Circle Relics podcast. I am Jamie, all on my own this week, but we are going to be bringing you a full-length interview that I had a couple of weeks ago with somebody called Richard Sparks. Now, Richard worked for Topps and Merlin from 2002 right through until 2008, responsible as the main editor and designer for their sticker range, and also dabbled in their trading cards around this time as well. The interview itself is an hour and a half. I'm going to include the entire interview as it was laid down a couple of weeks ago, so enjoy this bonus edition of the show, and me, Lloydie and Chris will be back with you next week for episode 39. And I am here with a guest today as we kind of do a broken skull session type thing with a special guest this time round. I'm going to be talking to a guy called Richard who came to my attention probably in the summer, I imagine, Richard, where we kind of first started talking. And then we kind of just had a sort of a fairly quick back and forth, and kind of like a pin drop. Kind of thought, actually, this might be quite a good conversation. So we haven't really gone into much detail, but I'm kind of hoping within this session we can try and sort of unravel a little bit of who you are and what you've kind of done. I guess just introduce yourself to your listeners, a kind of who you are, what your kind of career background is, and then we'll get into how it relates to collecting hobby and kind of how it then pieces together, really.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Richard Sparks. And for a while, from end of 2002 till about, I think the last bit I did with them was in 2007. Officially anyway, I was an editor for Topps, who were formerly known as Merlin, and then they combined. And yeah, so I don't know, giving it away. I was WWE editor for Topps Europe during the Attitude Era, which was the best era by a mile.
I was going to say, most of us, I think, are probably of that same kind of era as well, and it kind of like has a great relevance to us as fans growing up, really. But I guess, have you always lived around Milton Keynes, and is that how you got involved with Merlin in the first place, or how did that all come about?
That was a weird one. That was a weird one. So I went to uni back in '98, and so I did like a bullshit degree in I think it was digital media and cultural studies. So very early sort of web design days, sort of back in '98. Finished uni, bought a pub, and I ended up meeting a girl. She lived in Milton Keynes.
Okay.
I was too young to be running a pub by a mile and doing mature and stupid. So the pub sort of folded, went tits up, and I ended up moving to Milton Keynes. I was working like various jobs for a little bit, and then one day in the local paper, the local rag, I happened to notice a WE logo, like the
right.
I think it might have even been the old scratch WF with the going back to those days possibly. Yeah, that'd tie in about right. I noticed that in the local rag, and it was for a junior copywriter job, working for Topps in Milton Keynes, purely on their WWE stuff. And I applied for the job.
Were you always a fan growing up then? Or?
Yeah, so I was. I was really lucky when I was a kid. We got Sky quite early on, so I remember, all superstars and stuff, and Bret Hart versus some jobber, or the Italian Stallion, or who was it, Barry Horowitz, and against I don't know, anyone, Jim Anvil or something. And I remember watching all of that, and then for my 11th birthday, I knew SummerSlam was coming to Wembley. And my birthday's in December. It's coming up soon, actually. And so it was Christmas and birthday combined. I asked if I could get a ticket to SummerSlam the following year, and my dad got one ticket, and that August, or was it August? Yeah, it must have been.
It would have been August.
Yeah, went to SummerSlam. So I waited nearly a year for my Christmas and birthday present, and my dad dropped me off at Wembley with a $5 and a Mars bar and a can of Coke, and said, "How long is this going on for?" And I said, "Oh, I'll see you in 6 hours, Dad." And met him outside the Wembley Towers a lot later. It's not something I'd do with my kids. Amazing. But not 12 years old. But so I was at SummerSlam 92, which was amazing. I think the next big thing I probably went to was WCW tour, probably around 93, 94, when
it would have been mid-90s. Yeah.
I think Bulldog was on the card, so it was that era. Bulldog versus Vader, I think, was the main event. And sort of, I probably became more a fan of WCW, the Saturday afternoon show that was on ITV back in the day. Big Sting guy. Sting's my number one, absolutely gutted I've never produced anything with Sting on it. But so followed WCW, and then sort of died off a bit, like a lot of us did. Probably around then, like 95 was a terrible year. 94, 95 was just just bad writing across both companies, and so sort of left it for quite a while. And I think, like a lot of us, or certainly people my age, it wasn't cool for a period. And then I made a friend sort of late 90s when, like Austin and everything was kicking off, and sort of got back into it. And he was super into it, like trading tapes and getting stuff from Japan. ECW was out. We used to stay up till ridiculous o'clock on, I think it was on TNT or something, ECW, staying up, like having a beer and waiting for that to come on. And sort of fell back in love with it a little bit. Went to a couple of the tours, like late 90s, early 2000s. And then, came across that advert in the paper and went for the interview.
So it was really a bit of a dream job as such, I guess, for you being a fan as well, growing up. Did you know what you were going to expect in when you got through the door, other than that sort of small ad in the paper?
No, I had no clue. Like I'd collected some of the Merlin stuff as it used to be. Like I distinctly remember the Black Album, which was the Superstars sticker collection. That must have been early 90s, around the time of SummerSlam, I guess. And I remember the pink one with Bret Hart on the cover. A little bit later.
Much desirable now as well, actually, as well.
Yeah. And I remember walking through, and the first thing I saw was a cutout of Stone Cold on reception. I was like, all right, this could be fun. This could be fun. And I had the strangest interview of my life. It was a guy called Chris Rodman. I think he was like the CEO or something, or he was head of editorial, head of publishing. For Tops, and we did this interview, and all the way through it he was sort of drooling, and I was like, when you're being interviewed, you don't want to say anything, do you? Because
no, of course not. No, it's a good impression.
He might have had an issue, and he was asking me all these questions, and then it wasn't until he gave me the job that he sort of revealed to me that morning he'd had a couple of wisdom teeth out, and all the way through, I thought he might have been having a stroke or something.
Something wrong.
I just didn't want to say anything. But the interview was interesting, sort of, because at that point I hadn't really watched it for a while. But there's a real influx. I suppose it was almost turning, it probably was turning from Attitude Era into that ruthless aggression kind of phase,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
you would have been right on that cusp as well. The name change as well, I guess.
Yeah,
That's sort of
yeah.
2002 period as well,
that
wasn't
was
you?
a big issue. We can get onto that. There was a lot of photoshopping around that time, but so yeah, there were some guys like I think Rosie and Jamal were maybe listed as one of the questions. I had to identify wrestlers and stuff, and yeah, I had no clue because I'd not watched it for a couple of years, and everyone else I got, and then I had like 40 minutes to write a little piece about my favourite match, and the last WWE match I'd seen was probably Hell in a Cell with Taker and Mankind, and so I wrote a little sort of play-by-play review of that, and I failed A-level English, and so going for an editorial job was a brave move, I suppose. But he must have seen something in me, and I found out sort of at the end of that week that they were going to offer me the job, which was the lowest paid job you can get in publishing. Like, it was ridiculous. Even back then, I think it was like 11 grand or something.
Man, that was my first job, actually. 11 grand seemed to be like the magic number, I think, for that sort of era.
Maybe. But it was so cool, like going in, and there was, obviously Tops and Merlin were known for the Premier League album. That was their money maker, So there was a studio with maybe 5 or 6 designers, some really old school Macs, like some G4 Macs, and all of them were working on football stuff. And then there was a team. Some of them are still there as well, like my friends Matt and Dave. Dave's head of publishing now, Dave Ramplin. Like, anyone who's ever collected anything in the UK probably owes Dave a big thank you, because he's been there
a big nod
25 years, and
wow.
Everybody else in the studio was working on football stuff, and I had a little corner desk by the exit into the warehouse, and it was cool because the director of publishing at the time was a guy, Dick Wallace, and he came in with like a box. He was like, "Oh, Rich, you might like some of this," and it was all just WE merch and like, retro cards and foam fingers. I decorated my corner, and it was really cool. It was a great proper first job, if you like. Yeah.
So were you like quite a small team then? Because obviously they were quite keen on having someone with some wrestling knowledge. Was there sort of more of you, or was it kind of like a one-man team working on wrestling because it was quite a small piece?
No, in terms of the wrestling. So around that time, I don't think when I started we actually had the license for the trading cards. So we had a sticker album license. So my first couple of jobs for WWE were just all sticker albums, which is quite different to trading cards. It's interesting. Probably not as collectible as trading cards, but I think Fleer probably had the license. That sounds familiar.
They did at that point. That's right. Yeah, 100%.
So I think it was. I must have started 2002, the end of 2002, and it probably wasn't till end of 2003 that I started on my first trading card collection. Which I think would have been Apocalypse, which was the first one. In the meantime, we'd done quite a few sticker albums for like Raw versus SmackDown. I did one that I thought was amazingly clever, that one front cover was Raw. And then
that's right. Raw upside down, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the other side was blue and red. And, that sold pretty well. In the meantime, as well, we were trying to develop, because publishing licenses are funny. You can get, like, say you get the sticker license. If you make anything sticky, you can basically make a WWE product out of it. So we were doing we did like giant stickers that didn't sell very well. They're basically eight. But
that was a giant album as well, wasn't it? It was like an A3 album, wasn't it?
I mean, it hadn't been done before. It seemed like a good idea, but actually the shelf space that it takes up in retail just made it difficult for retailers. So that didn't do particularly well. It did well in Italy. It did really well in Italy. They just have a different sort of setup. They have a lot of little kiosks, and so
that's right. Yeah, like little newsagent stands.
Yeah, so they'll sort of make a display around a product. But Smith's was one of our biggest retailers for everything, and they're very sort of set in their ways. Even today, if you go into Smith's, there's probably, I think it was like a 16-inch shelf that you have to fit on.
And
that's probably still the same today. But yeah, a lot of his sticker albums were doing pretty well. We did like, what else did we do? Like tattoo stickers, I think. And alongside all of this, then we had a WWE Euro shop, as it was at the time.
Okay.
So that was the mail order merchandise side of things. So that was all.
The one and only.
Oh, there you go, man. Yeah, so back front cover, yeah, I picked that image for that, yeah, and and me and the lovely lady Sarah Woods, she ended up doing most of the design stuff with me, and she was there for quite a few years, and so that was another side of it where I'd pick products that we'd use. I mean, WE, I can't remember what WE shop was. Shop Zone, was it called back in those days?
The American was Shop Zone, that's right, yeah. So, and it moved to Euroshop, yeah.
Yeah, so Shop Zone was run by WWE themselves, and they'd send us all the designs, but, some things didn't translate too well. Some things were just really hard to get produced over here. So if you were importing stuff from the US, it would cost an absolute fortune,
trade tariffs and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. And then some things like they never did a William Regal t-shirt, because he wasn't that big over there, but over here, it's William Regal. So you've got to have a knuckle duster besmirching t-shirt, so I got really involved with that, and was picking the products. We were designing our own products. I learned all about screen printing t-shirts. We had like this place up in Blackpool, or just outside Blackpool, that did all the t-shirts, and I used to get the layered vector files for all the shirts and have to send them off.
Wow.
But we're talking about early 2000s here, so one t-shirt file, it's not like you could email it. Well, you could email it, but another funny thing we had in the office, the head designer at the time was a guy called Paul. I forget his surname, but he'd been there forever, done all the Star Wars and stuff from way back, and he sat in the opposite corner to me, and no one told me about this, but I knew there was a computer in that corner, but no one told me what it was for, and it just seemed to just be sitting there. And every now and again, I'd be sat at my desk, like working away, and I'd hear a quack. It was like quack, and I'd turn round, and Paul sort of cottoned on to me turning round, and so I'd spin round, and he'd twitch when this quack happened. For about 3 months, I was convinced he had Tourette's. And what it actually was
making the noise himself.
Yeah, what it actually was this. It was an ISDN computer in the corner that was just like downloading gigabyte files and taking all day to get a gig. That's how old school it was.
And it's not that long ago, really, when you consider it.
No, I mean the advances in it now are incredible. I mean, just I know we're talking about wrestling, but the Premier League album was the big money maker for Topps and Merlin. And the first year I was there, we were getting actual, hard photographs, the headshots. So there was a photographer employed to go around all of the football grounds, and the team would be called in, and they'd stand against a white wall, and he'd take a photo, and not digital. So we'd get an actual paper photograph, have to scan that, and then put it into Photoshop. And when it was getting close to deadline for the Premier League album, everyone would be on Photoshop 2.0 or whatever it was at the time. That's how I learned to use Photoshop, just cutting out heads and cutting out the background. And that feels ridiculous. But then, not that long before that, they didn't have Photoshop. They were doing hand layouts and copying them.
Yeah.
So it's really advanced. And then you see what they're doing today. Like, panini is a swear word in my house, but what Panini have done with the last lot of WE stuff is just incredible. And the digital side of things, and really limited edition cards now that you can only get through digital, and then they print them off one at a time or whatever. That just blows my mind. I wish we could have done that sort of thing.
Even to the concept, I know we're talking how things have changed now, but even like to the point where Panini have done one-of-one stickers and kind of took that, and you think that's a crazy concept to try and have that in the marketplace as well. And the whole business has changed so much in that time period, even as a collector,
Yeah, I think it was probably all cost issues. We used to get most of our stuff printed in either Italy or Poland when I was there.
Okay.
But this is before digital printing was affordable. Digital printing would just be for the proofs. The proof sheets would come through in sort of A0 size, and just all the stickers or all the trading cards. You see them on uncut sheets. You see them every now and again on eBay, don't you? But that was a digital print. Everything else was like still a lithograph print. So a lot of tooling involved, and it just cost a lot more. So you couldn't do one-offs. You couldn't really do limited runs. But that's just tech has made it a lot more affordable, I guess.
So you mentioned there obviously about how that would be done for like the football albums, and we've heard like through the grapevine around different card collections now, like WWE or AEW will send a batch of images that they can potentially use. How did that work for sticker albums around wrestling? Because like you said, you can't just send a photographer out to take images of wrestling. Would you have had a whole batch come through, and then how would you even start that process of like trying to collate a sticker album? For example, I know we've got that Euroshop album, but something like that, for example, when would you start doing something like that, and where would you then begin, really?
So the way I used to do it, there was a program called Quark, which was a predecessor to InDesign. InDesign's taken over now. But Quark was a very simple sort of desktop publishing program. And so sticker albums, for example, are all, I'm pulling stuff out of my brain from 20 years ago, but I think 52.
No, you're fine. You're absolutely
52 page rings a bell, maybe. There was a certain amount of pages in most sticker albums. It always had to be an even number because of the folds and stuff and having your cover.
Okay.
So I'd like lay it out very simply, just squares, 1 square for front cover, 2 squares for inside front cover, page 1, then page 2, 3, and then I'd work out who I wanted on each page, depending on what the theme was. With a lot of the sticker albums, it was you'd have your featured superstars. I remember when they were still called wrestlers, and then they brought out, we're calling them superstars now. And that sort of stuck with me weirdly, but so I do always refer to them as superstars, which winds other people up. So I'd have my featured superstars. So, like, I don't know, The Rock would always have a double page spread, Triple H, Stone Cold, the big guys, the main eventers would have double page spreads. And so then there's also a certain amount of stickers, because you can fit a certain amount of stickers on one of those sheets. So a certain amount of stickers go on a double page spread, a certain amount of stickers go on a single. Then you might have like a set of 4 that make a SmackDown logo or a Raw logo. So then it's working out how many stickers per page. And from that, you can work out how many images you need for stickers. There'd generally be a couple of studio shots of guys and then a load of action shots. And and then there's images for the background. So, there'd be a Triple H on the left-hand page and stickers around him and a bit of blurb. So I'd write that blurb about Triple H, what he's been up to, whose daughter he's been, whatever. And
spending time with.
That's something we can come on to. But like when I first started, it was still very kayfabe, you sort of reported, you talked about it as though it was a real sport, a bit like a friend of mine in the business, Bill Apter. I stay in contact with Bill even today, and he's always reported it totally kayfabe, as if it's totally...
Yeah, of course. It's a totally different view of looking at it as well, isn't it?
And, we were aiming it at kids, and so... there was always that suspension of disbelief, if you like, and it was nice to
100%.
Nice to carry that on. Sorry, I'm waffling, but so a certain amount of pages, certain amount of images, and then I'd make a Excel spreadsheet and write off to the team over in Stamford. Email. I didn't write off. It's not that long ago, and generally they'd send me in the post a load of CD-ROMs with a load of images, and
wow, okay.
Then it was back and forth, and they'd always sort of send me twice as many as I needed, and so there was a lot of picture editing as well. So picking the right image for the right spot, and then working with the designers at Tops to try and make it look good. I probably on my first one, I just left it all to the designers, and then they used to take the mix. I'd just get like an A3 sheet and just like scribble on it with stick men. I don't have an artistic bone in my body, but I'd try. I'd try and have a little bit of influence, that's how it's made. And then I guess they take that spreadsheet of how many images, and they'll look at that for royalties for the boys.
So did they give you any kind of like idea what they would want out of a potential sticker album for that year, or did you propose ideas to them? They said, let's run with that, or was it really down to you as a Tops office to decide, no, this is what we're going with this season? Because
I was watching the show, and like following it, like the football guys would follow the football. I knew who the main guy was. I knew who was getting pushed for the next 6 months. There were occasions where I'd be like, I think so-and-so's going to be popular in the next 6 months, because, from brief to production is probably a 6-month period. So, you had to try and predict a little bit. And, sometimes that would become difficult, like, Austin takes his ball home or whatever,
vanishes last minute.
I mean, we had a couple of occasions where, unfortunately it happened far too often where guys would pass away. And, in most cases, that was fine because, it would become a tribute to them. In one particular case, it's like,
it changes.
We've put this out with Benoit, it's like he's got a double page spread, and it's like, oh crap, and we've got to take all the t-shirts off the website and stuff. And but the guys had it with it's very similar on the Premier League album. We'd have everything done. We'd have Rooney in an Everton shirt, and he goes to Man United. So but there'd always be a cut-off date, and all the text and all the proofs would go off to WWE once we'd finished our bit, and they'd have final say on everything.
And was there much back and forth with them? Because I have got like the proof sheets and things from Fleer, like the emails exchanges for a couple of sets where they said, we don't like that, it needs to be this way round, this needs to have less shine on it, and all these kind of things. Were they like as picky were with Fleer and trading cards, or were they quite lenient with stickers because it's in a smaller market, do you think?
Well, I think Merlin have a long history with WWE, going back to like the gold cards and the old trading cards
Yeah, the
from
gold ones,
from the early 90s, and Merlin was set up by WWE or WWF. That's where they made their money, that they could go on and do the football stuff later on. They just really hit it in the early 90s. I don't know if you know like the history of Merlin, but it was like three guys who worked for Panini decided to go out on their own. Like the main guy was
right. No, I didn't know. No.
Okay, there's an old there's actually a documentary about it that was on ITV2, and maybe 10 years ago it came out. I can't remember what it's called, but the main guy featured in it was a good friend of mine, this guy Kelvin Gardner, who sadly passed away a few years ago. But he and two others had been working for Panini, and sort of thought, we could do this on our own and not have to travel out to Italy all the time. And, so they set up Merlin, and WWE was their first big license. And the money from that went on to pay for like the Premier League and all the football stuff and everything else that followed on. But yeah.
Wow. No, I didn't know at all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Kelvin Gardner, he's worth looking up. He was also head of a thing called Lima, which was like the licensing industry management association, I think. But Kelvin was like came up with some of the best licenses and also some of the worst. Like but he was a guy who'd like try everything, and like for collectibles and stuff like that. Again, he's a guy who deserves a big nod and probably didn't get the recognition he deserved, but really interesting guy. No, so clever. Do you remember Ice Warriors? It was like gladiators vaguely. On ice. Yeah, that was Kelvin's idea. That was.
Well, there's always swings and roundabouts, I guess.
Yeah, it wasn't a big hit for him, but I forgot where we were going. I'm sorry, Jamie. I've been rambling.
No. It was saying about Merlin, like that process, like around, was there much involvement around, authorizing things or having to double check stuff?
Yeah, so I think because they'd had a previous relationship, there was a lot of trust, and they did come back on things. And like the first couple of things I did for them, and if you look back through old sticker albums and trading cards, like talent names like Undertaker would sometimes have a TM and sometimes a circle R after it. And I don't think it has anything anymore, because it ruined the look of stuff if you had to put TMs and registered trademarks across everything, and that would change from week to week, it felt like. So they'd come back, I'd send them a big Word file with all the editorial, and they'd read through it and say, oh no, that's a TM, that's a circle R. You can't say that about Triple H. And there were some things like just differences between us and the US. If I tried to put a little bit of humor in, sometimes they wouldn't get it, and they don't understand sarcasm at all. And, like later on, we did some poster magazines. And they did come out in the UK, but I think only 4 of them maybe came out in the UK. But it went on a while longer in Italy. And I came up with this character called, in Italy, it was La Spia, the spy, and it was like an insider. And I was trying to be Bobby Heenan, and kids would write in with questions, and I'd call him a pencil neck geek like Freddie Blassie, and they'd come back and go, oh, you probably shouldn't be horrible to these kids. I'm like, I'm just copying stuff you guys have been doing.
I know who I am. Yeah.
So there were, some things were lost in translation, but on the whole, we didn't have like any major controversy. I think it was probably more on our side that sometimes they'd be like, but there was a certain T-shirt that our CEO was just like, we're not selling it. I mean, it was a great T-shirt. It was a test T-shirt that just said, I love my testicles. And
Oh yeah, right.
our
Yeah,
CEO was we can't sell that. You know, we're marketing to kids. I'm like, it's not to kids now. You know, it's
and that was quite a short-lived gimmick as well. I think that soon fell off the cliff.
I don't remember it going long. But no, they were pretty cool. You know, I'm sure at times it probably felt like, oh, for God's sake, you know, I thought we got the final version and they still want to make changes. But no, overall. And I worked on some other licenses as well, because like I say, everyone else was doing the football and, you know, there's only so much time I could spend on WE. So I did like the new batch of Star Wars, so from Phantom Menace, and LucasArts were by far the most difficult licensee to deal with. You know,
really?
Yeah, there's like 6 ways to write lightsaber, depending on its context, and they sent like a lexicon, so like a Bible of how to write about Star Wars, and it was like inches thick, you know, and they were the most protective brand that I'd ever worked with. I did like Lord of the Rings and I did a load of Nickelodeon stuff, but that was just whilst I was waiting for someone to say, let's do another WE collection.
Let's do some more wrestling, yeah. So when that album was done then, so you have an album, you have that 6-month period where it's beginning to end, it was all approved. How would that then be processed? Would you then just have the order get made? Would you then do a test of the sticker album when it arrived to make sure it all matches up, or how would that process work before it then went out, into the world, into retail?
Well, I mean, once we've got the proofs, so everything comes on those big digital A0 sheets, and then it was generally down to that guy Paul, the lead designer, to go through and check everything. And just made sure the colours were all good. And then it's like, okay, let's press a button. And, with non-digital print, consistency is always risky. It was back in the day. Mm-hmm. That's why everything's digital print now. So, you'd get some slight anomalies and, like foil stickers were always, or how's that going to come out? And certain overlays that we do on stuff, like if we were embossing something or putting like a textured overlay on something, that was all, let's see what happens. But one day you just have to press a button, and then within a week you've got like 250,000 copies of a sticker album coming over from Italy on a boat, or however they came over, and they come into our warehouse and then go out, get distributed to all the retailers, and then you've got your on sale day, and then I'm waiting on reports from the sales guys to see how it's going, and that's always like a little bit scary. But all of them were good sellers, but that's not down to my writing or picture editing. That's down to how well WWE was doing,
how the product is at the time. Yeah.
And you see that WWE, it goes in cycles. It always has done. I don't watch too much of the shows anymore. Like I tend to tune into the pay-per-views if I'm around, and I'm old now, so I watch them the next day. But I weirdly, I still read the same website that I read every day whilst I was there. I still read, I don't know if I can plug it, but nodq.com. I read, I've read that every single day pretty much for 20 odd years. I don't know why. It's just what I do when I get up.
Just routine.
Yeah. So I keep an eye on things, and every now and again I'll look up like TV numbers, or they're reported on that website, and you see it going up and down, and it always will. But it feels like we're going through quite a good period at the minute.
I think we're in a bit of a boom WWE wise. I think AEW's cooled off a little bit, but like you said, that will be a hot product again, and then WWE will be slightly cooler because something isn't resonating as much,
Yeah, and the big. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, with those stickers, so would you, like, when you had that, would you keep a track on, like, how well they were selling, and would you put a product sooner if you were going to run out beforehand, or would you get more made up if it was going so well, so quickly? Like, what would you do in that kind of situation? Or would it be a case of once it's gone, and you wouldn't do any more?
So there's a formula for sticker albums in particular. We know how many packs a kid is going to need to buy to complete an album. You can't take into account swapses in the playground. But so we know that if you print 250,000 sticker albums, we've got to print this many packs of stickers.
Right.
A couple of times, I think it was that Flippy album, that Raw versus SmackDown. We did a reprint on that because within the first couple of weeks, you can tell how well it's going to sell. The album itself, it's weird now because I've got like stacks of stuff in the loft, like empty sticker albums. I've got 3 daughters, so no one's interested in it.
I was going to ask you about this later in the interview, actually, about some bits and pieces, but we'll get back onto that in that case. Yeah.
But you see the albums going on eBay, like a nice empty album will go for like 30 quid sometimes. So I'm like, God, I've got a few hundred quid upstairs. But in terms of production, the album is a giveaway. It's like we make no money on the album.
And it often was as well. It's normally with a magazine. Sometimes if you bought the latest monthly mag, it would be chucked in with a packet.
Yeah, or like the Daily Star. I think we gave a couple away with those, and the money is in the amount of stickers that people have to collect. So. Yeah, every now and again there'd be like, oh, it's doing really well, let's print some more. But in general, I left that to the sales guys and the accounts guys. They do, forward-thinking predictions on how well it's going to do. And the better it did, like my first one did quite well. So we'd do a bit more on the second one, a bit more on the third one.
Right. And watch it as this market goes as well, really.
Yeah. And, and I probably did have a bit of input. I'd let people know how the TV ratings were going. We'd keep an eye on ticket sales. We'd always try and do a release around a live tour, because, then WWE did most of the marketing for us. We'd, and then those live tours were great because I'd end up on the tour, which was really good fun. I mean, it's pretty heavy, but it was really good fun. Like, and we never did the merchandise at live events. That was a different company, the Goldsteins, I think they were called.
Goldstein,
yeah, they do a lot of live event merch, and they always printed them on shitty quality T-shirts, and then we'd get all these T-shirts after a tour. We'd get all these people sending T-shirts to us saying, "Oh, it's the transfer's fallen off.
It's faded."
We'd be like, "Yeah, you didn't get it from us. Sorry." Have to send it back or whatever. But yeah, if you put stuff out around a live tour, that it's going to sell, or we like give away albums at the tour because that's 20,000 seater stadium, so get rid of 10,000 albums there. That was always a hard slog if the PR people didn't show up, putting a sticker album on every other seat in the NEC or the MEN. It was I'd do that, but that was quite cool because you get to see guys working out in the ring before the show and stuff like that.
Well, so that's quite a clever thing to do, actually, because you then know exactly people are going to buy stickers, which again is like you said, that's your money maker then, isn't it? Exactly. So it's quite a good marketing tool to do.
Yeah,
really.
I imagine it's a bit like drug dealing. You give them a taste. And then, I'm not sure how morally corrupt it was, but I don't know if that wasn't. I just.
Well,
yeah. pick some.
You say about morally corrupt. The pricing about, I know things and inflation has changed, but at that point in time, an album was £1.49 and your stickers were 30p a packet.
Wow.
Now we're paying a lot more for stickers these days, and this was only 2002.
Yeah.
So, morally, you were probably knowing how many packets you would have to buy to complete an album. You know, the pricing there was a lot fairer than it is now to try and complete an album, especially, you know, with Panini, for example, you know.
Yeah, but I think you're paying for what you get. You know, like our stickers were like very, very simple. And then when you talk about trading cards, it's, you know, like I managed to get a few like relic trading cards. So there'd be a bit of a shirt that you'd see in a circle and stuff. But that, at the time, that was about as far as we were going with anything. And you look at like the limited runs now, all the different foils they use. I saw like, what do you call it? Like lenticular cards. I've seen a few of those where like you move it and the image moves. And, for us back then, that was just too expensive. But, the way printing's developed, you can do so much more. And I think you pay for what you get, you know. I think like I keep a vague eye on secondary market stuff, and it blows my mind what some things go for. Yeah. And I'm not talking about, you know, rookie cards from 40 years ago. I'm talking about like when people are breaking packs and, you know, like, you know, the AEW cards that came out a couple of years ago or a year or so ago, they were like hen's teeth over here. And, you know, people were paying like 40 quid for a blister pack. And it's, I don't know. I don't know what a pack of Panini cards were going for. I didn't buy any, but, I think, they've come on so far now. And a lot of them, you know, people treat them as an investment. You know, I'm a big fan of like, Major Pod. You know, I listen to that quite a lot. And, and the boys, you know, because I collect a lot of figures. That's the thing I collect. But,
okay, that's your vice.
Yeah. But the guys on there, you know, they're always talking about cards and just slabbing them and putting them in the safe and leave them for 20 years. And, it seems safer than the stock market. So,
I think so at this point. Yeah, definitely 100% sometimes.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about obviously things that are rarer. Is there any truth in sort of some stickers were rarer than others to complete an album, or people saying I was always wanting that one, or was it fairly even across? And it was just, you know, potluck of getting those packs, really.
Yeah, I mean, the stickers were printed in different amounts, but the formula for how many packs you'd need was kind of set, you know. So we knew how many. I don't know. I'm trying to think back to when I was a kid, like that Pink album. Yeah, I think there was a shiny WWF logo on page one, maybe, and everyone thought that,
which was most of the time all the way through, wasn't it? There's always a logo at the front.
Yeah. I used to do that. Yeah, and that would be less of a run, but that would be factored into how many packs that someone would need to buy. But there were never any where it was like 100.
No,
fine. And everyone else has 1,000. Some were a slightly less percentage of the total amount of stickers than others, but that was because we needed you to buy a certain amount of packs to pay my wages and keep the company going.
No, of course, you know? I think,
and that's probably the way it works now as well.
Yeah, I think, you know, maybe less so now, but I remember, like, obviously during my teens when I was buying stickers, like if I bought a box, for example, like if I got 36 packs, then I would know pretty much guaranteed I would be completing an album on a box. But I think now, like Panini's runs, even with the football and wrestling, like you're looking 300-400 stickers, even with the later Topps ones actually over the last few years. Like that's a lot more stickers that you're expected to buy to complete. And I think that era when you were definitely working at Topps, it seemed to be a lot more keener that it was an easier accomplishment to try and complete an album, if that makes sense, more than it is now. It seems to be a lot more reliant on people swapping back and forth to complete albums and buying singles directly from Topps or Panini, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't want to make it too hard because then no one's going to buy the next one.
Yeah.
But trading cards is different, isn't it? Especially now. I think, like, does anyone have a complete set of AEW cards? I don't know, because there were so many, like, limited run ones and, like, one of ones or whatever. I don't know if it's possible to complete a trading card collection nowadays. Is it?
Well, I'm a completist collector of cards. So, like with AEW, for example,
Right.
I'm trying to get an AEW, but that's been nearly 2 years, and I'm still a long way off from doing it. But you just keep chipping away at it, you know. So, but there's not many people. A lot of people are just PCing like guys that they would want. You know, someone will collect nothing but rocks, or only collect Tristras or something. So, there are different types of collectors, but yeah, there's a lot fewer people going after those base sets and completing things now.
Yeah, it's a different game. And I think also the consumer has changed. It's probably guys like yourself. When I was doing it, it was kids, and no one was thinking about the resale value of things. And I think it's probably the same with figures that I've come across. When COVID hit, a lot of people were at home. We're getting all nostalgic about stuff. And the figure prices of like Hasbro's is my main one.
Okay.
And what I could get a minute on card Samu for 10 years ago, I'd get that for 20 quid, and all of a sudden in COVID it was like 200, and now they're sort of way back down again because people have realized that we've just developed a really expensive habit. So I think cards that are produced today have to be better because they're aimed at a more adult market, if that makes sense.
No, I think you're completely right. And it shows what we've had from Panini over the last couple of years. Like we've had like one card set from Panini since they took the license here in the UK. It's all been US based, and it's then having to import it and things like that. So there's a totally different market feeling over here. It's all still pretty much football, So from stickers, so you've done stickers for the first few years, and it was then Topps then got the license for cards away from Fleer, and it then opened up, cards. Were you there for that early part of, obviously, the like you said, Apocalypse and kind of doing those insider sets and stuff, or was that kind of at the end of your career at Topps?
No, both Apocalypse and Insider were mine. Insider's my favourite. I've got a couple of full sets of those still. I just really like the graphics on those, the sort of green matrixy kind of style of those. So yeah, they were both mine. I think I probably had a couple more as well. And again, once you get the trading card collection, then you can start doing weird things. Like we did, I don't know if you'll have ever even seen them, like these transfer tattoos as a trading card. Yeah, so we did the tattoo collection. We did God, it's hard to think. I'd have to look them all up. But Insider was a really, that was great for us. And Topps, so Merlin merged into Topps just before I joined, but they kept the Merlin as a brand, and the brand was associated with the sticker books and wrestling stickers.
Yeah.
When we got the trading card license, it was Topps. It was Topps trading cards. Topps have that massive history of trading cards in the US, and all the baseball and whatever else they've been doing since like the 50s or whatever. But Topps Europe and Topps US were still separate entities at that time. So Topps US were doing different things, but they looked at the insider cards and basically took that and put that out in the US. We went all over Europe with that. There was like a French version, a German version, an Italian version. The Italian version did really well. Might have been a Spanish version as well. I'm not 100%. But that was the biggest collection I ever worked on, I think, the insider stuff. Apocalypse was like my first crack at it. Looking back at like some of the design, I'm not that keen on. I was kind of obsessed with that red and blue thing because it made sense with SmackDown and Raw, but looking back, it probably wasn't anything that special. Where I think Insider Collection, we moved away from a more traditional card, and on the Insider, that's where we started breaking kayfabe a little bit. You know, we'd talk about what guys had done previously in their career. It wasn't as
closed door, I guess, by that point, really, was it, as well? Like, people were getting a bit more wise with the internet and stuff.
That's it. And things like WE Confidential were out on DVD, was selling that, you know, so that was behind the curtain sort of stuff. The biographies were coming out. Mick Foley had done Have a Nice Day. Well, every Tom, Dick and Harry was doing like a biography, and they were all like Simon and Schuster, I think, were the publisher for them. And it seemed like there was a new one every week. It was my favourite period, you know, that like I'd been a fan growing up, and then I'd been lucky enough to get this job, and I'd go on tour and I'd sit in catering, and I'd get to do all these things that like fans were like, fuck, that's amazing. And it was amazing. It was like the best time ever. And to be able to reflect that change in Tough Enough had come out, hadn't it?
Yes.
You know, by then. And I think that was Vince's, from what I heard, Vince hated reality TV. He hated the idea of peeking behind the curtain. But they tried a few little things, and it did really well for them. I think that MTV tie-in that they had with Tough Enough was probably quite a bit of money involved in that. And, you know, one thing from what I understand Vince loves is making money.
I think so, even to this day.
So like, I think he became more open to the idea of breaking kayfabe a little bit, if you like. And that's what the Insider Collection tried to do, or certainly give the impression that we were, you know.
There was definitely a shift as well as we went through. If you were at that time period, I'd say 6 years from like 2002, there seemed to be a lot more interest as well in starting to put some legends in sets. Not many of them, but dropping in a few Pipers or a few sort of Bobby Heenans, whereas that was never a thing in the Attitude Era. It was all very much the current styles. Did you notice that more of a shift in the trading card sets you were doing as well, that there was more?
Yeah, well, that was something I wanted to bring in. The whole Legends deal came out around that time. I think we've probably got Jax to thank for that, you know, because they started
classic superstars.
And so these guys were getting signed up for, Legends deals. And that opened up like a whole load more talent that I could use. And actually, we went from like, I can't remember the figures, but say a traditional one was 156. We'd go from 156 cards to 280 or whatever. So the collections became bigger because we had more faces to use, you know, faces as in faces, not heels and faces. And for me, that was great. And I think also there was starting to be a bit of a shift that there were older collectors. At the same time, all the merch, all the T-shirts were coming out. Like, I remember for 1 quarter, the best-selling T-shirt for us was a Roddy Piper.
Yeah.
You know, the classic white with a red neck and cuffs and the Hot Rod logo. That was the best-selling T-shirt for a whole quarter, outselling like 316 shirts or whatever it was then. What T-shirt? I can't remember, but outselling Cena and outselling all these guys. And in a way, I felt like quite good about that. I thought, it's nice to give back to some of the old boys who
a little paycheck
set us up where we are now. Yeah, I don't know what deal they got. I don't know whether they got anything from the trading card.
Well, at least you tried nonetheless. Anyway,
and it was a really interesting period. Like I said, Sting was my guy in WCW, and my guy growing up was Warrior. I mean, I've got a little Warrior tattoo, you know, and he hadn't signed a Legends deal, and it was that period of his life where he just gone absolutely mental.
Yeah, gone wild.
Like sort of right-wing conservative, hate speech guy, and he had that One Warrior Nation website going, and I sort of tracked him down through that, and I wanted to post a magazine on him,
Right.
And we looked at doing like a solo deal with Warrior, but at the time there was nothing going on with him and WE. I think Jax had probably done the first figure in that classic Superstars set, so he was in like a Euroshop catalogue as a figure, and I figured that might be an in.
Okay.
But yeah, the legalities of it, we'd have ended, and he probably wanted a fortune. But somewhere in my stack of stuff, I've got like an email from Ultimate Warrior, which, that's one of my favourite things. It's just a printout of an old Yahoo email.
Just a little nugget of something you've got.
Yeah, that's one of my favourite things that I've got in my collection.
I think let's go on to that just a little bit in that case before we sort of go on to other bits and pieces. So as you've gone along, obviously you've had, I assume, many little perks that you've had throughout, your time with Topps and Merlin. Are there any other cool pieces that you've managed to keep for yourself? Is there things that you've wanted to keep and you were never able to? And what sort of things have you been able to do while working for Topps that you wouldn't have been able to do outside of that area?
I think, so I got to go to any sort of UK tour. I'd always get a ticket. I got front seat on hard camera at the NEC. I knew what episode it was because I bought the network just to show my current wife. And I had hair and stuff, and I'm sat in like dead center of the ring. And at one point, it's Batista versus Triple H at NEC. And Batista like whips Triple H into the barrier, and it's right in front of me, and I'd had quite a lot to drink, and I sort of leaned over and slapped him on the tip.
As you do.
that's all on camera. It was and like I was sat next to a lady called Donna Goldsmith, who was like head of licensing for WWE, or very high up in licensing.
So that name Donna, she's actually all over the Flair proof emails that I've got as well, Donna. She's signing things off, all the proof, all the corrections. That's all from Donna. Yeah, she signed. Yeah, she was in charge of that kind of thing, and she was great to work with. She was the first person that I had any personal contact with that was sort of in a raft of releases one year. I thought, that's a real shame. Poor Donna. I always often wonder, actually, because going through that, like, you do wonder what happened to these people down the line, So I guess from my own knowledge, it closes it out. But yeah, anything like that, she was like, on there saying, no, Steve Austin's no longer with us. Please remove Steve Austin from this trading card. And you see this mass panic of what they need to do to replace him in this album and stuff,
Okay, yeah, that'd be interesting.
But yeah, I digress. I was saying, sorry.
Yeah, so all the tours I got to go to, I've been to a few Manias. I went to 20, 22, 23. Like, I've got a few like fun stories of like hanging out with some of the boys. That was quite cool. Like, my favourite one is we're in like a travel lodge type hotel in Norwich, of all places, on one of the European tours, and I ended up playing pool with Cena and Flair.
That's great.
And Flair went full Flair mode, and we'd bet like a drink on it, and Flair just went full Flair mode, like moving balls and like just proper being heel and strutting around the table, putting me off and shit. So I lost. I'd have lost anyway. I'm shooting crap at pool. And I was like, "What are you drinking?" And John was on Jack, and Flair was on Cavassier. And so I came back with a Jack and a Cavassier, and Flair was like, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "We don't play for shots, boy. We play for bottles." And I had to go in a hotel, go and buy a bottle of Jack and a bottle of Cavassier. And that was a big night.
I was going to say, I was on the company card, I hope.
Yeah, it was, but then I had to explain it. There was a Taker once slapped me on the back and asked me where he could get a good cup of tea. That was like, I didn't really mark out that much, but Taker I completely marked out, and I was just like, yes, sir, sorry, sir, I'll go and get you a cup of tea, sir. And like came back like half an hour later with a styrofoam cup, and he was nowhere to be seen.
Wow.
Yeah, like, I met Trish, who I was in love with. I met Nydia lots of times, who I was even more in love with. I know it's a weird one. I don't know if anyone even remembers Nydia, but she was the nicest girl ever. Eddie Guerrero on one of the UK tours, I pissed him off. So I was dead lucky. I've got like AAA passes for a lot of the venues just because I was doing stuff.
Well, you're kind of working for them in some ways, well, aren't you? Although you were there off, you were still working remotely, technically.
Kind of, yeah, sort of, yeah. I'm sure at the time I used to tell people, "Oh yeah, I work for WWE, not or I write sticker books." Yeah, there was some event in the UK, and I remember, he used to come out in the low riders and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was a UK event. It might have been Manchester, and he came out in a Jag XK8 in like British Racing Green.
Nice.
And I was sort of wandering around backstage like before the show, and they did like a run through, and I just walked through this door and found myself on the ramp just as he was coming out in the car, and he like beat the horn at me. It's like, what the fuck?
What the fuck are you doing here?
Yeah. Like, and I met a lot of the guys. Like Cena was cool. Cena was, there's a reason Cena did so well, and that's because he was like just the most professional guy. I met him at Mania 20 in New York at like this licensee brunch thing.
Okay.
And like, there were all these different tables, and a superstar would come around and sit on the table with you for a bit and then move on. I was chatting to Cena and just saying how well his merch was doing. I mean, did he win the US?
At WrestleMania 20 he did, yeah, that's right.
Mania 20, big show, was it? Yeah. And like, so he was just starting that Doctor of Thugonomics, hadn't even really won a title yet, but like his merch was doing really well because it was kind of cool merch, and I was telling him all about that. And I didn't see him for like 2 years, and then he was like, "Oh, hey, Rich, you're that guy from Euroshop." And I was like, shit, it's been
he remembers
years.
me, yeah.
Wicked. Yeah, let's go and play pool and get drunk. And Eddie was nice. I shared a meal. I sat on the same table as Eddie in catering, which was a big no-no. I totally shouldn't have done it, and I was just getting evils off everyone. But I remember Eddie, it was after he'd like sobered up and everything, and he'd been doing really well. But I remember he like went through catering, and like he got a salad, and then he got like a main course, like a meat dish, and then he got dessert, and he just put it all on the same plate and just like shoveled it. So it was like I can't remember what it was, but say like cheesecake on top of shepherd's pie or something. It looked gross, but I suppose,
he enjoyed it.
Yeah, to a lot of the guys, it's just fuel.
Yeah, just to keep them going. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't really think about it. Big Show was always good fun. Paul, he was good fun. I got this great T-shirt where I couldn't actually go to this event, and but I'd spoken to him and said, "Oh, I'll see you at this event," and it was him and Edge doing some promo thing, and I ended up going on holiday, and so someone else from the office went and came back with this T-shirt saying, "Hope you had a good vacation, you wanker."
That's amazing. That's amazing.
and so that was quite good. I think, yeah, in terms of like merch, I've got like a load of uncut sheets. I've got a rare card that at some point I'm going to sell.
Okay.
I'm getting married in August.
Okay.
So that might come out. That's it's not a WE card. It's a WCW Bulldog card.
Oh.
But and it's signed.
Okay.
And I think there's 2 others that people know about. So at some point I might release that, because I think that's probably worth a few.
Well, I mean, yeah, we'll maybe if you do decide to sell, come to the show again, and we'll talk about that in a bit more detail about that card and the set. Maybe we'll tie it into that. But with what you've got, then what you've got, have you managed to hold on to a lot of the stuff? Then you mentioned about proof sheets. Have you got boxes of stickers that were not sold, or out, like you said, you got albums, or have you just collated stuff over the years?
I mean, over the years, I've sort of worn a lot of hats. After Tops, I ended up working for a company called Pedigree Books. They sort of found me on MySpace. This is how long ago it
Did they
was.
do that, the annuals and stuff? Was it Pedigree? Did they do annuals?
Yeah. So they got the license for WWE. I'd moved down to Cornwall. I was still doing like some freelance for Tops, but to be honest, I needed a full-time job, and they sort of got in contact with me, and ended up doing a lot of stuff with them. So yeah, I've got a suitcase full of crap, really, that has followed me through about 6 houses. Some of it, like I say, I did a lot of other licenses. My Little Pony was a big one of mine. And my daughter is 7. I've got a 7-year-old daughter, and she's starting to like look at Daddy's books and things, and that's quite
nice. That's really cool.
Yeah, the WE stuff, I think, it's probably always just going to be for me and my ego and remembering the time I had a cool job.
Do you ever get the feeling you ever want to go up there and get a box of stickers and just do an album for the fun of it, or are you sick of the sight of seeing stickers at this point in your life?
You know what probably ruined it for me was one of the last ones I did was the Champions sticker album. It had a sort of red cover, and at the time, a friend of mine had like a 6-year-old lad, Theo, his name was, and they'd moved to the other end of the country, and I said, "Oh, when we come and see you, I've just done this sticker book. I'll bring it down with you, and I'll bring you a couple of boxes, and we'll go through it and fill it up." And he was dead excited. And we opened the first page, and it was an intro from Michael Cole. And
was it from Michael Cole, or was it you as Michael Cole?
No, it was from me. But yeah, and I should also point out my middle name is Michael, and Theo, 6 or 7 years old, goes, "You've spelt Michael wrong." And I was like, "No, I haven't. I'm looking at my driver's license." I'm like, crap, I really have. And that's like 200,000 copies. I was like, yeah. Yeah. So that was probably the last sticker album I filled in. I think, yeah, every now and again I do look, I've got like loads of trading card, like packs and sticker packs, and yeah, maybe one day I'll go through them all.
Yeah, so I would love to see, because that kind of like background stuff and just like the promotional stuff, I find that type of thing really fascinating. So if you ever decide that you want to go up the loft, at one point and share some images, please do share them, because that'd be an amazing thing to see.
Yeah, sure, man. I mean, I started getting into the marketing side of it, and I found like the advertising side of it quite interesting. And actually, after I left Tops, and after I left Pedigree, I went into marketing for sort of the next 10 years.
Okay.
So, and that was all stuff that I learned from Tops with a lady called Louise Ramplin. She was like head of marketing on the WE side of things for Tops, and she was great. And actually, we ended up working it together again, like 10 years later when COVID hit and Tots laid a load of people off.
Oh, man.
She came and worked for me, which was cool. So yeah, the marketing side and the advertising side and all the promotional material that would go up in a corner shop and then get thrown away. Like I've got quite a lot of that, and that's quite interesting. And then some of the stuff that only went out in Italy, because for a time it sort of died off a bit in the UK, and we were just pushing stuff in Italy.
That's right, yeah.
Where it was big, and it had gone on to like their TV. I think it had gone on to like terrestrial TV in Italy, which always helps. There's a guy, what was it, Michele Posa? I think he was like the commentator. And yeah, I went to an event in Milan and I was wearing a La Spia t-shirt. Like I printed myself a La Spia t-shirt, and the logo for it was a sort of silhouette of my head. When I had hair, and like, I've always worn big glasses, so I had like spiky hair and big glasses, and someone recognised me as La Spia, and that was the best moment ever. The only other time that happened, I once got mistaken at a very long distance for Spike Dudley.
Are you taller than Spike Dudley at least?
I don't think so. Like, what was Spike? Yeah, no, we were probably about the same height and build, and we both had like real messy blonde hair.
Oh,
it was across a car park, in Coventry, I think. It's almost like Spike Dudley, and yeah, you'd think, oh no one would pretend to be Spike Dudley and wave back.
Of
course I did.
Did you give the symbol?
Like, hey. Yeah, we're all like, yeah. So that was good fun. But no, it was a great job, and I do miss it. And sometimes I think, oh God, maybe I should have stayed there and not moved away. But times change.
Yes,
I think they're getting the license back, which is
rumor has
exciting.
it. Yes.
Yeah, with Fanatics, is it?
Yeah.
Fanatics bought Tots, and I think Fanatics are going to be like
the monopoly of everything.
Monopolised. Yeah, and more power to them. But yeah, I still speak to some guys there. I speak to Dave every now and again. I hope one day they get the Premier League out, like license back. I think that'd be really good because I think Panini have still got that. And I think like WWE, collecting goes in cycles, and I don't know, like my daughter doesn't collect any stickers or trading cards at the minute. Match Attacks went really strong. Match Attacks came out of Slam Attacks. Everyone thinks Slam Attacks came after Match Attacks, but we actually developed the idea for Match Attacks came when we were looking for a new trading card format for WWE.
Right, okay.
So Slam Attacks
came
before Match Attacks, and then we just made it football. So I know they were doing really well, but I think at some point it'll pick up again. But it's moving with the times, mixing it with digital, all that sort of stuff.
Well, it's funny you said about like with Slam Attacks as well, because like Slam Attacks seems to be, it came from like a different generation, if that makes sense. Like we kind of gone from traditional to Slam Attacks, and even that has over the years has changed to have now relics, and you've had, you know, different parallels and stuff, and that seemed to have reflected that American, you know, trading card habit, and that seems to have now taken off, and that's really been primarily the big card thing over here for the last 10, maybe 15 years at this point. So it's interesting how that's gone through, you know.
But also it's a slightly different license, so that would be a gaming card license.
Yes, that's right.
Rather than a trading card license. So I don't know for sure. They may have kept that license whilst they lost the trading card license, or Panini might have.
Yeah, it's all gone. Yeah, it's all done now. So we're still collecting 2021 at the minute. So.
All right. Well, yeah. Hopefully, you know, I'll send this to Dave. I'll send this podcast link to Dave, and Dave, you know, give me a call. I've probably got one more match in me.
Yeah, I can do it. Let's talk about that one last piece.
As long as we don't have to talk about nothing from the last 5 years. So, you know,
as long as it'd be a nice, easy interview, it'd be all right, I think.
Yeah, man.
But yeah,
But I think with a bit of competition as well, like the AEW stuff. I was at All In at Wembley. I went with some of my Dolly Club friends, as my missus calls it, other figure collectors, and to be back at Wembley and a massive crowd, albeit the new Wembley or whatever, that was quite nice. And I think AEW will do a lot more touring over here than WE do. I think that'll be their plan because Khans have their tie-ins and stuff. And I think any competition in wrestling is a good thing for the product, and then a good thing for collectors because people have to put out great stuff. And the AEW cards are amazing. I think what Panini were putting out were pretty good.
Yeah.
And when Topps get the license back, it will be even better.
So, sort of doing a bit of fantasy booking here then, what would, if you had your time again, or if you were to go back to Topps again, what would you do different and what would you put out now that you weren't able to then, having the modern technology? And what's also your proudest piece that you've put together during your career there for that 6-year period?
Yeah, it's a tough question, man. I think, I used to have to argue with the finance guys about how many foils I could have because they were like 3 times the price as a normal sticker or a normal trading card. I mean, we're talking fractions of a penny, but
it adds up when you get millions.
Million of them. Yeah. So I think, I don't know, like if I went back next week and designed a trading card collection, there'd be a danger of it looking like when my 7-year-old decorates a Christmas tree. I'd just throw everything at it, hologram cards. I'd probably want some that had a microchip that played their theme music. I don't know, like I think I'd probably push it to the limit until someone at work said, "Come on, Rich,
we're doing too much here."
I mean that's what I'd be tempted to do. I think like the American Topps cards, they did like the Heritage collection.
Yeah, it's one of my Heritage is one of my favorite of modern cards, definitely.
Was it at the time though when they came out? Because when they came out and they were like reflective of like the 1990 black card collection or the 91 gold cards, I just thought, what the Jesus, we've gone backwards. I know they had like some relic stuff in them, but that first run of those, I was like, I don't want anything to do with these. But now as an older guy, like, and a bit more nostalgic, I quite like them. But at the time, I just wasn't into them. So they just seemed quite plain to me, and they had like that brown back to them, and I get the idea they were meant to look retro, but at the time I couldn't stand them. I don't think anyone's off limits now in terms of who you could put on a trading card, or maybe Benoit, but like anyone who's ever performed for WWE, who's ever had a match in WWE, they're on the network. So they're signed to some sort of royalty deal.
You've only got to look at the Panini autograph checklist now as well. Like some of the autographs we're getting of people, you think, these names haven't been ever signed at all, So I think you're right. I think people who are off limits, there's very few people who could not be approached for something if they could do an individual deal with a card company or a sticker company,
If I was doing it just for guys who lived through that era, so an adult collector, the one regret, well, I'd like to think he thinks it's a regret, but like the way Vince booked WCW Invasion, like I think there could have just been so much more done with that. And now having access to all the ECW, all the WCW image library and the WWE library, I think there's something that could be done there. relive that invasion or fantasy book that invasion as it should have been. And then who knows, maybe I'd get to do a Sting card.
Yeah, the Sting, yeah.
But for one thing, I'm gutted I never got to do. I think that would be a really interesting collection. And so much talent. And you can go back to the old days of WCW and, you know, WCW legends. If they're on the network, I assume you can use them.
Yeah, I think they are trying to do a lot more legend stuff now, but I think you're right. I think there is definitely an appeal for an adult collector to have a legend sticker album. You know, think about something like that. It'd be right down people's alleyway, really. So,
yeah, that'd be really good fun. But no, in terms of what I'm proud of, like I say, I like that insider stuff. I liked some of the shirts that we came up with in-house, like William Regal collared me at an event and said, you know, thanks for doing me a shirt, and that was nice. And it was, you know, it wasn't the best-selling shirt in the world, but, you know, whenever he came out in the UK, he got a massive pop, so it was worth doing, and people wanted to buy the shirt. But overall, yeah, it was a dream job for somebody who's a fan, and I got to experience a lot of great stuff and hang out with some cool people. And yeah, it didn't feel like work most of the time, so that was good.
I mean, I could talk to you for hours and hours. There's probably things that we finish this interview and it's going to crop in my head. I'll be like, oh, I wish I could ask him that, but I mean, you know, both Lloydie and Chris weren't able to join the call team, but I'm sure they've got a few things that they would like to ask you around, especially sort of like card collecting and sort of those like 90s sets and, you know, your kind of journey there. So, you know, the doors are always open. If you want a session too, you're more welcome to come on and we can chat a bit more and a bit more details about other bits and pieces around your time, you know, working for Topps and Merlin.
Yeah, anytime, man. Yeah, I'll blabber about this forever.
So look, before we finish up, we've been chatting for nearly an hour and a half now, so it's time has flown by. But let's give people some plugs if people want to find you. You know, if you're on social media or anything that you're involved with now. I know you mentioned you do your own sort of podcast stuff as well. So you know, here's a chance. The floor's yours.
Yeah, man. So yeah, me and a buddy of mine, we do a podcast. It's not wrestling related. We've picked 52 subjects to talk about over 52 weeks. We put out a weekly podcast, lasts about an hour. That's on YouTube, at This Show DNB. So, Delta November Bravo. This Show DNB. That goes out every week. I should probably give a little shout out to one of the Facebook groups I'm in. That's Legion of Hasbro. So anyone collecting figures, it's a great little group, and they do some cool like community stuff. We have quizzes and giveaways, and yeah, and there's some great admins there. Other than that, no, but I'm out of the biz. I'm afraid I do something completely different nowadays. But yeah, try and dip a toe in every now and again.
Oh mate, it's been really great talking to you this afternoon, and yeah, we'll be talking to you no doubt somewhere down the line to maybe have a session too, and even maybe have you on to discuss that elusive Bulldog card that you might be looking at moving next summer. So
yeah, one day, man. One day.
But yeah, no, but it's been great having you on the show this afternoon. Thanks to everyone for joining on this episode. We'll see you for a full episode of the Square Circle Relics podcast next week. Speak to you soon. And fuck John Cena.